Okay, I'm back. So I have to wait for you guys to. Hopefully the problem is fixed now. I hope. Now I feel like I'm talking to myself. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. All right, now I just have to wait for you guys to get to find me again. I closed the other chat window, so. Oh, why is this still doing this? I don't want this up. Oh, hi, Elise. Okay, so somebody's here. I'm like, I figured something is screwed up again because nobody was coming over here. But like, my own YouTube is locked up now, I think. So I'm just going to give it a minute so that people can come over to this one. If anybody has my Facebook group open, if you could go there and maybe post in the comments that there's oh, actually, I can probably do it. Hold on. Now I got to mute again. It's muted. Okay, so while I'm waiting for people to come in, I'm just going to change the link. Seriously. Just talk amongst yourselves in the chat for a second, for anybody who's here. I suppose I should edit. Mm-hmm. This is fun. The joys of live streaming. I shouldn't have even tried to do something new, but I thought I had it figured out. Okay, so the sound is better at least. Yeah. I have no idea why just setting it up as I don't know. I won't do that again though. It's just nice to be able to set it up ahead of time, set up as a live event, because then, people get a message saying that, when it's going to be going on and everything. And so that was why I wanted to do it that way. But apparently there's some issues with that. I really don't know how to fix those sound issues. So. Oh, Jane. Okay. You haven't seen it. Then go away. I don't want to spoil you for anything. But thanks for popping in. I don't think any of the people that were in the other one have popped over. Let me see what's going on. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to keep so you guys could watching me try to figure this out. Yay. Okay. Now there's people back. Thanks. I felt bad that there's only like Lisa and that was it. And Jane, who I couldn't say anything in front of. Now I just got to give it a minute for everyone, for other people to get back. So I am so sorry. Like, it's not already late enough. Well, for some of us. Well, I have 7 here now. So no, I didn't have both videos running. It was just something weird because you have to do it. You have to do the streaming differently. You can't do it right in OBS. You have to use a special encoder, and that must have been what was causing the problem. I don't really know. But Jane, go away before somebody posts something in the chat. Spoilery. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Well, first off, I guess I want to know what everybody thought. I mean, it's hard to believe it's over, but I'd love to know what everybody else thought about it. My feeling was that, considering I wasn't a fan of the last 2 episodes and I didn't really have high expectations, I actually liked it better than I thought it would. It was funny that I said in my video yesterday, I said that, like, everybody's talking about Bran, being the one that's going to take the throne. And I'm shocked that that's actually the way it went. I kind of laughed a little bit at that. But I was right that there was no Iron Throne. I got that part right. I said I didn't think there was going to be an Iron Throne, and there wasn't. And I'll get into that more a little bit later. And yeah, it had to have leaked. I mean, I figured it had to have leaked because once they showed that he did take the crown, then it seemed like, well, it had to have had a leak then, because I don't think that many people would have been talking about it. Yeah, I felt bad for Drogon too, because that was so sad when he was pushing Dany's body. That was so sad. Interesting though that he didn't bake Jon, but he baked the Iron Throne. I guess Drogon's more intelligent than we thought, and that he knew that it was the throne that was the problem, not necessarily Jon. It was that stupid Iron Throne. Yes, I agree, Beanie. That's what I talked about a lot in the live stream from yesterday, is that I had a problem with how rushed it was and how characters I thought were acting out of character. I was still holding out hope that maybe Dany would live, but I knew that she would have to have some remorse for what she did. The minute she didn't have any remorse, I was like, okay, yeah, she's going to die. It was just a matter of who was going to do it. And, I still thought it was a chance that maybe Arya would do it. But I can't say I like how it happened because I feel bad for Jon, but I think that is a more fitting way for it to have happened. And I feel bad that, like, I didn't really understand, like, Bran can essentially pardon Tyrion and make him his new hand, but he can't do that for Jon. That part kind of was like, really? You just, you're the king. That's what Bran even said. Like, I'm the king. I can pardon Tyrion if I want to, but they're saying, like, well, nobody would have been happy about it if it was Jon. Why? I mean, there weren't that many people that were fans of Dany, so it's not like I think most people would have actually thanked Jon after what just happened. The only people that were mad at him were the people that were there, like her people, and Yara, but whatever. We don't care what she says. And I did not think Yara's attitude about it was out of character, because this is what the Ironborn do. I mean, they reave, they rape, whatever. They do all that, and they don't really care. They're not really a people that care about, what happens to others. They're very pretty brutal people there. So yeah, I really wasn't all that surprised about Yara's reaction to it. Tyrion planning it all out was full circle. I'm glad that Tyrion finally had some good moments, because it's been a rough couple seasons for him. And it did. I mean, as much as I hated, like, I don't hate Cersei being dead, I still hate Jaime being dead. But that really was heartbreaking for him to find them, and that moment for him. And good for him for having the balls to, like, throw her Hand of the Queen medal away, knowing that he was going to be executed. I don't think he really cared at that point. I mean, he kind of lost everything. He betrayed his best friend, and he lost his brother, the only person who ever really loved him. And I don't think he really cared anymore. I think it was a lot to live with, to know that. I mean, it's essentially, I mean, he's responsible for Jaime's death too, because if he wouldn't have released Jaime probably wouldn't be dead. So he was the one that wanted to try to save Cersei, so he sent Jaime essentially to his death. So that had to be weighing on him too. So that was a lot for him to have to deal with. No, I mean, okay, so Beanie's saying, do you think John's heading out with the Wildlings, defying the king's order to take the black? No, John has taken the black. He's just ranging with them and probably helping them get settled because they're now um, allies. So yeah, so no, John's not going to live with the Wildlings. He's just helping them to go out there and probably help them settle into wherever they're going to settle. Now, granted, I think some more people from the Night's Watch should have went with him, but he's definitely taking the black. And I was really happy to see a better better finale for Ghost. If there's one thing that made me happy was like, oh, John, thanks for acknowledging Ghost now. So I'm glad Ghost lived and that John finally like gave him some love. Well, the Unsullied were leaving. That's the thing. The Unsullied. So I don't. I mean, it would have caused a problem with the Unsullied, but again, they were leaving, and they really weren't clear about where the Dothraki were going. What happened with them? Because it was the Unsullied that were on the ship. So I don't. Maybe the Dothraki were going with them. It would make sense for them to do that. And in which case, Bran still needs, an army, but it looked like he had the support of everyone except for the North, where he's from. And that was the only other thing that, I mean, there's just a couple things I had issues with. I thought the Bran thing didn't make a lot of sense just because Bran had said he's not even a person now, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, he'll be the best person to rule. And as I said yesterday, it's like Bran like doesn't say anything. Like he's like this mystery and he just gives like a few words here and there. So I'm not sure how that lends to being a good king. Granted, with his ability to see the past and probably see the future a little bit, that would probably give him a better chance of making better decisions than a lot of previous kings because he'll know the consequences or he'll at least know the mistakes that were made in the past. So I think in that respect it makes sense, but it was just the way it was described, like that when Bran said, I can't be the Lord of Winterfell, I'm not even a person now, whatever. So in that respect, I just didn't think it made a lot of sense. I also don't think that it made a lot of sense that Sansa would be able. No, it makes sense for Sansa to say we're an independent republic or independent kingdom. Sorry. It didn't make sense that everyone else didn't just be like, oh, wait a minute. Like that was an option. I would have expected everyone else to do the same thing then. Why would they want to be under a king's rule when clearly all you have to do is ask and you can be an independent kingdom again? That part didn't make a lot of sense to me, or it didn't ring really true to me because it seemed like everybody would have been standing up and been saying like, yeah, us too. We'll just take care of our own from now on. So, I mean, like, so now he's united 6 kingdoms and hey, we did see the Prince of Dorne. Still don't know who it is, but we saw him. It was kind of nice to see some of those old characters back. Oh, poor Edmure. Poor Edmure Tully. He still gets no respect. And now from his niece is just like, sit down. Stop talking and sit down. Edmure has been just like, I mean, that's exactly how his uncle, how the Blackfish talked to him all the time. Just like, shut up, you're an idiot. And now Sansa's talking to him the same way. After he's been in captivity for a long time. But hey, he's finally free. Still got his wife. They had a kid. So it's not all bad. He just needs to not talk or act like he has any authority on anything. Yeah, I was looking for the inside the episode, so it wasn't just me. I thought maybe that it just wasn't on the app yet or something, but so they didn't have it inside the episode for anybody. Okay, probably because they're doing the big documentary in a couple weeks or next week, whenever that is. Yeah, next week. I know. Oh, Misty. Oh my God, I laughed when Davos did it. So, the Lord of the Lofty Titles. I laughed. I love Davos so much, and I was so happy that he survived. But I can't believe Bronn actually got Highgarden. He's like the worst excuse for a lord ever. And then, they're saying like, well, now you're the richest man. Well, where did this money come from? Highgarden was looted. I mean, and then Drogon like flamed the loot train. So where did this money supposedly come from? That it's like Highgarden just isn't made of money. The Tyrells like earned money over the years and made money over the years, but I don't know how all of a sudden Bronn was like the richest guy. Yeah, I thought it was funny. I mean, I figured Bronn was going to be in this episode since Lena Headey wasn't going to be, since those two actors can't be in the same scene together. So I figured when she was dead, they're going to bring Bronn back. But I can't believe he's on the small council. I think that's a little too comical. I mean, he has. Bronn is a survivor. I will give him that. But come on, he really doesn't bring anything to the table other than that. He is good at being a sellsword. That's what he's good at. And then you have Davos being the master of ships. You know, his last name is Seaworth, so makes sense. That's what he does. So that's good. And then we had Brienne as being the lady commander of the Kingsguard. It was pretty touching seeing her write in the Book of the Brothers, or the White Book, about Jaime, because that is the commander's job, is to write about, you know, the basically the life of and the duties that were performed by the previous Kingsguard when they pass away. So what do you mean they didn't put Tyrion in the book? Tyrion in what book? The White Book is just for members of the Kingsguard. And Pod is now a knight. Good for you, Pod, and a member of the Kingsguard. So he and Brienne will be together serving for life. And there will be serving with Tyrion, which is cool for Pod. Yeah, I mean, it made sense that Brienne would be the one to put it in there. And so that was pretty cool. Oh, in the Ice and Fire book. Oh, yeah, that was funny that Tyrion wasn't in there. It's like, yeah, come on. How can you not have Tyrion in there when he's such a big part of it? So that was more comic relief than anything. Realistically, there's no way Tyrion could not be a part of a story about the War of the Five Kings. And who else was there? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank now. Who else was there on the small council? I'm missing one person. Who was it? I'm just totally drawing a blank. I know I should have taken notes or something, because I'm going to forget all this stuff now. Oh, and I changed the graphics, if you notice. I put Bran on the throne, even though technically he's not on the throne, but I changed it. I was like, I guess. And I wouldn't want to always be known as Bran the Broken. Like, most of the Targaryen rulers have nicknames. You know, Aegon the Conqueror. Now, that one you might want to be called because, you know, whatever. But there's so many. I mean, you have Aegon the Unworthy, Aegon the Unlikely, and you have Maegor the Cruel. You have, you know, they do this, but usually it's not like part of their official title. Usually it's something that the small folk will call them, and then it'll catch on and they'll be put in the history books. So almost all of them have some kind of nickname, Jaehaerys the Conciliator, you know. So, I mean, it's just weird that they just keep referring to him as Bran the Broken. I mean, like, dude, seriously, like, stop calling me broken. I know more than you do. No, I haven't talked anything about the House of Undying. I think that was so, like, they just, her experience in the House of the Undying and her experience with Quaithe is so full of prophecy that they just ended up, like, brought some of it into the show, but then just totally let it drop. They just didn't want to deal with it. So I didn't really talk about that too much because, well, and plus her experience in the House of Undying in the show is way different than it is in the book. Because she sees who she believes to be Rhaegar with a baby, saying his is the song, he's the prince that was promised, and his is the song of ice and fire. And in the show, she saw Drogo and their son. So that didn't really even make sense. Oh my God, I forgot Sam. Yes, I forgot. We were just talking about the book too. Sam is the Grand Maester, which not surprising at all. Wow. Yeah. Well, Janet, she couldn't put that in the book because members of the Kingsguard are not supposed to father children or bear children. I mean, there's never been a woman before, but I assume the same is true. So she would not be the commander of the Kingsguard if she was pregnant or had a child, because that's not allowed. It's just like when you take the black, you can have no titles, no lands, and you cannot marry and not have a family. And it's the same for the Kingsguard. I'm very happy too that Pod became a knight. He earned that. I also did not like the whole Arya, I'm not going to go back to the north. I'm just going to go out on my own. Like, seriously, you're just going to, like, you've hardly even been with your family in how many years, and you're just going to walk away. But the part that really bothered me is when she said the whole, like, what's west of Westeros? And again, this is just me because I have read the books, and nobody survives that. Like anybody who has ever attempted to go where the map doesn't, show has never been seen again. I mean, there's an exception that some people have gotten a little bit of a ways and somehow made it back, but not like far out. Everybody's disappeared. And the people that have disappeared doing that are like the greatest sea captains in the world at the time. And yet Arya, who I'm pretty sure knows nothing about the sea, and I don't even see any like people on that boat. It was like, that bothered me. It's just a dumb thing for her to do. I like her adventurous spirit. I understand it, but again, just knowing that, yeah, that doesn't really happen. Yeah, I mean, I said I would have been fine with her just wanting to go on adventures, but doing that particular one was just kind of like, ugh, no, that would not be. Thanks, Arya. I'm glad you lived because you're going to die now because nobody has ever survived that. And again, people who actually have, experience, on the sea and have huge boats and everything. Yeah, someone else mentioned that too, Arya Beyond Westeros. It was funny when my Taylor was messaging me a little bit right before I went on, and when she referred to Bran as being on the throne as like that kid who is in like your work group and does nothing but then gets an A like the rest of you. I thought that was a pretty good analogy. Yeah, it's like, thanks, Bran. You've been like literally no help the entire show. And yet all of a sudden it's like you get the throne or you get to be king. And I would love to know where Drogon went with Dany's body. I would assume back to Essos somewhere. Dragons are known to go back to what is familiar to them and where home is, but they moved around a lot. So I would say that it would be hard to say where he would go, because where did he go when they were in Meereen and he took off for a while? I think that was like his nest or where he was hanging out. So that might be where he takes her. Not really sure. Yeah, well, I mean, she can't go to Valyria because there is no Valyria. It's unless you just dropped her off there somewhere. But I mean, there is no Valyria, and it's dangerous to even go there. So it doesn't make sense that he would go to, because Drogon was not born in Valyria like the other dragons. He was born in the Dothraki Sea. So, yeah. So I thought about that too, but it wouldn't make sense for Drogon to go there because he was never born there and he never was there. And it was interesting that he didn't fry Jon. And, the obvious explanation would be, well, he knows he's a Targaryen and he's got, Targaryen blood. So, he didn't kill him. But dragons have killed plenty of other Targaryens before. I mean, the whole Dance of the Dragons. I mean, that was Targaryen killing Targaryen and dragons killing dragons. So, I mean, that's not usually a thing. So, but for the sake of the show, I guess they could go with that. I wanted Arya to change her mind and go marry Gendry, and then I wanted them to keep Drogon because Gendry does have Targaryen blood, so he would be able to be a dragon rider. That's what I wanted to see. I wanted him to have a nice little family with the dragon. And I thought possibly they might show Drogon and show some dragon eggs or something like that. I thought that might be a possibility, but they didn't. Just like at the end when Jon was leading the wildlings out beyond the wall, I thought you might see something to indicate that the others are not really gone completely, but we didn't see that either. I guess they wanted to wrap it up a little more tidy than that. The leak was he took her back to Valyria. I said that would make sense if he was like an older dragon. It's like from 300 years ago. It doesn't really make sense now, but whatever. It's possible. Hi, bye. Thanks for stopping in. I still think that I'm still not thrilled with how Dany's arc, like the rapid change and just her not getting it. Like I'm still not thrilled with that, but that has already happened like in the last show. I was already so the fact that she still didn't think what she did was wrong doesn't really surprise me. And I think that it's funny that I had said last night during my live stream, I had said that John has only been in a situation once where he was the leader, and that was when he was Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, and his people killed him like shortly after. John would not make a good king, and I still kind of have to stand by that because Tyrion had to talk him into doing something. He was still, she's my queen, she's my queen, she's my king. I'm like, oh, grow a set, John. Come on. You're supposed to be this moral like person. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. And but Tyrion had to talk him into it. And then even after he did it, he's like sulky about it. Him and his brooding. You're like, did I do the right thing? I'm like, you did the right thing because she had said that she was going to liberate the rest of the people. If liberating them means burning them all to death, well, that's not going to be good for the realm. So I thought it was just proof again that John would not have made a good king because he can't make a decision. And when he does make a decision, he can't get over it. Just like how he couldn't get over hanging the members of the Night's Watch that stabbed him. I like Dany to a certain extent too, but with where they took her, there's nothing you could do from there. There was nowhere for her to go from there. The only thing was that if she lived, I figured she'd have to go into exile, but how are you going to make that happen? So I figured that, like I said, once I saw that she was not even the tiniest bit remorseful for what she did, I'm like, yep, she's going to die. I was surprised that she died as early in the episode as she did. That surprised me a bit, but I guess they wanted to wrap up everything after that. And again, I liked Tyrion being smart for once. Because he hasn't been very smart in the last couple of seasons, and his big speech before they elected Bran the king. I did think it was funny. Poor Sam. Maybe we should let the people vote. Maybe that'd be the best way. And then they all just started laughing. So no, a democracy is not coming to Westeros anytime soon. And I'm so bummed that John seemed just so like torn apart. So hopefully, seeing Tormund and seeing Ghost, I hope like helped a little bit because I figured it was going to be sad going to the Wall because he lost all of his friends and even Sam's not there now. So I figured that would be hard, but I figured Tormund was going to be there, and I'm glad that he was because even though Tormund's going to be going back out with the wildlings, they'll be in touch. They'll be back and forth, whatever. So I'm glad that he still has a friend there and he has Ghost with him. So that will be good because he just seemed just so miserable when you think about it from the very first episode. John wanted to be a member of the Night's Watch. That's what he wanted to be. That's what he wanted to do. And obviously he became very disillusioned with that after getting murdered and all. But it seemed like that was the place for him. I don't know what the Night's Watch has to do now, really, because you don't need the Wall to protect anybody from, the wildlings are now their allies and there are no more undead. So, I'm not really sure that the Wall is necessary or that the Night's Watch is necessary. It's probably only necessary for the respect of you need a place to send the prisoners. You have Bran the Builder and Brandon Breakspear, and then you have Bran the Broken. So a lot of alliteration with these names. Yeah, I noticed that too. Ghost was a little bit bigger today. Ghost is ever changing size. Even though it looked like they shrunk him a little bit again when they were out running out behind the wall. But when John first went up to him, it looked like he was a little bigger. I was still holding out hope that we'd see Nymeria again, but. And I kept thinking that was a possibility. Like when I was thinking about how could they stop Drogon. Even though we know it's possible to kill a dragon, even without the scorpions, if you can shoot him in the eye with something, probably more than just a regular crossbow, but still, if you can shoot him in the eye, you can kill a dragon. But aside from that, I was like, what are they going to do with Drogon? And part of me thought that maybe Bran would warg into Drogon and control him, maybe even with Dany on him, and then Dany really realizing she's lost, like, her dragon doesn't command, bend to her commands anymore. But I guess that was probably too much, too much for this episode, because they seem to have forgot. Other than Bran like warging into the ravens, they kind of forgot that Bran can warg, apparently, because ever since he warged into Hodor, that's the last time they showed him warging into anything other than the ravens, I'm pretty sure. And they removed, I mean, in the books, Jon and Arya warg as well, and are very connected with their wolves. But they didn't even have that in there. I think Arya had, well, I can't remember if the show they had her having her wolf dreams, but she had a lot of them in the books. But they just got rid of that. Yeah, for some reason, I didn't think that Drogon was going to burn Jon up. It just was trying to figure out why. And it was very interesting that he chose to melt the Iron Throne instead. I was kind of wondering if Dany would sit on it and it would cut her, because that's another thing that's kind of part of the history, is that some people think that the Iron Throne almost has a mind of its own, and anybody that is like sat on the Iron Throne, a ruler, and been cut by it isn't long for ruling, because it's like the Iron Throne rejects you. So I was kind of wondering if they'd do that, but again, that really hasn't been established in the show, so I guess that there was no point. And in preparation for today, I did read this afternoon. I read The Hedge Knight again. I thought I'd finished 2 of them, but that's the first in the Dunk and Egg series, so it's only like 120 pages. So yeah, this afternoon I'm like, oh, I'll just read The Hedge Knight again. I had to be in a Game of Thrones mood. I'll not be out of a Game of Thrones mood for a couple months. That's usually how it works. And I do want to read the whole series again. It's been a few years. That's because of Making a Murderer. Seriously, like, I would read it every year otherwise, but I read too much for the case that I just don't want to do any like leisurely reading. Yeah, and I think Emilia Clarke did a great job this season. I thought that she's definitely grown as an actress. I think through the series, because she was definitely pretty green in the beginning, but I've never had a problem with her at all. But I think she's definitely gotten better. Yeah, I know you did. No matter what, I read a lot though for this, but I've actually missed reading for fun. So I read Fire and Blood, and then I just read because we were on vacation, so I read started to read Fire and Blood, and then I read Hedge Knight, and I'll finish the rest of the Night of the Seven Kingdoms, the rest of the Dunk and Egg ones, since they're all only like 120 pages. So what else can we say? I feel like I talked about so much yesterday that I really only have to cover what happened in this episode. You guys got to help me out here. What did you like? What didn't you like? Did you think anything was confusing, or? Because, man, I talked for almost 2.5 hours yesterday. That was all the buildup. Now that we know what happened, there's just not as much to talk about because you're not theorizing about anything or speculating. Costumes and music are for the best. Yeah. Emilia Clarke had a couple of brain aneurysms while filming in the beginning. It was after the first season, and then I think again after the third season. She had brain surgery twice, and that's crazy. She only revealed that recently. So that's pretty insane that she had to go through 2 brain surgeries, in the off season when they weren't in production. But she still managed to be there and do that. So that's pretty incredible. I'm trying to think of what else, if there's anything else specific. I wonder if Grey Worm would have been that brutal if Missandei hadn't been killed. I mean, he did what he had to do, but he wasn't that, like, completely unfeeling. Even though Unsullied are supposed to be unfeeling, but I think Missandei getting killed was just like, I will kill all these people and not care at that point. because I'm surprised that he even allowed them to have a discussion about who was going to be the new king, and like giving Tyrion a chance to speak. I'm kind of surprised he just didn't kill him right there and let him talk. So that seemed a little weird considering how he was acting. So what else is there? I was watching The Ringer before this, and they had like 72,000 people watching their live stream. Like just a few more than me. But I'm anxious. I will be watching my History of Westeros YouTube tomorrow to see their take on it. There were some things that I wish would have been tied up, better loose ends but I think they just didn't have the time to do it. I'm still kind of bummed that Mira never came back. I mean, that Bran just dismissed her and that was it. And again, her family has a different role in the book. Her father has not been introduced in the books, but he's talked about a lot. And they talk about him in the show a little bit, but in a different context, because it's always been suspected that Howland Reed was going to be the one that was going to confirm Jon's parentage, because he's the only one that would know other than Ned, because he's the only one that survived at the Tower of Joy. So I was a little surprised that we didn't at least get Mira back for something. But and yeah, and it was weird too because they even brought up the fact that I'm jumping around in my head, but I was thinking about Mira and Bran, and maybe she could have been his queen or something. But they said that Bran can't father any kids, so it's like, really? So you're gonna be going through this every time, I mean, hopefully Bran has a long life, and you won't have to worry about it again. So who was the Night King? It was a member. According to the show, he was a member of the Night's Watch. I don't know if he was the Lord Commander, but he was a member of the Night's Watch. Oh no, he wasn't, because this was all before that. No, sorry. Yeah, because all that stuff with the Night's King in the book happened after that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was just some random guy, I guess, that lived in the north. I can't remember if they said it or not. Because again, in the book there is no Night King. There is no one person or one White Walker that is controlling all of them. And today I was talking to my I went out to brunch with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, and they were talking about how they had the big funeral pyres after the battle at Winterfell, and yet they're saying, well, when the Night King raised all the dead, they should have poofed just like all the other dead. So why was there such a big funeral pyre? And I thought that was interesting. And I was like, well, maybe because there were still a lot of people that died after he raised the dead. But then I remembered that Lyanna Mormont and Dolorous Edd both were risen. They were both raised by the Night King, and yet there were pyres for them at the funeral. So I just thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. Weird plot hole, I guess, because that was the thing. Like, everybody died once the Night King was killed, and they just vanished into dust. But apparently not those. I guess they're not their friends. Their friends don't vanish into dust. Like, Theon was never raised from the dead, so they would have had his body, and same with Jorah. But Lyanna and Edd definitely were raised, so I thought that was kind of interesting. That's just a random thought that popped into my head. Okay, I did all the talking yesterday, so you guys gotta help me out. It seems like there should be so much to talk about, but again, I covered so much yesterday. Let's see what else there is. Sansa, got her wish from the very first episode. She wanted to be queen. She got to be queen, and she doesn't have any pesky king to answer to. But again, she's going to have to probably marry if she wants to have any heirs, to continue carrying on with the Starks, even if, because, the woman doesn't give the name, apparently. I think Sansa should, break the wheel with that and be like, no, this kid's going to be a Stark. So whatever. How many people we got here now? Only 5 people are watching. That's why nobody's saying anything. And for the sequel, or I mean the prequel, I saw on one of my podcasts, or it's a YouTube and podcast. They had said that the title Blood Moon is just like a placeholder title. It's not the actual title of the show. I don't know if that's true or not. So it might not be that.
Hey, Mom?
Yeah?
I'm leaving real quick.
Okay.
Do you care if she's in here?
That's fine. Well, you know, take her out if she wants to go out. Sorry. I had to adjust this appearance. Only the White Walkers went proof, but I thought it was all of the whites too. The ones that were raised all kind of went poof. I don't think they all just dropped. I thought they all just poofed. I mean, so dark. So maybe they did. Maybe at least maybe the ones that were recently raised, maybe they just fall over again. It's a good question. Jon Snow is the new Mance Rayder. He could be the king beyond the wall. I don't think he wants that though. Like I said, I think he's going to stay with the Night's Watch. I don't know if he'll ever want to be Lord Commander again. Seems like kind of a lonely existence. It was different when he really had a purpose. But again, like, what's the Night's Watch going to do now? I mean, they really don't need to do anything. Like, the wildlings aren't trying to, break into Castle Black and get over the wall, and you don't have the undead. So I'm not really sure what the Night's Watch is going to be protecting people from. Again, if it's just a matter of needing a place to send all the criminals for Kingsland or from Westeros, I guess maybe that's why. So I think that's a little bit different too. Like Jon's going there, but you're just gonna be hanging out every day. Like you don't have to like do anything. Am I gonna watch Handmaid's Tale? I don't know if I am or not. I've never watched it. I thought about it when it first came out, but I just didn't. And then I don't know if I want to because I heard it was kind of like depressing. And Game of Thrones isn't depressing. It's dark, but I don't find it depressing. Yeah, now we have to wait for the sequel, or I mean the prequel. I keep saying sequel, prequel. I don't want there to be a sequel. Like as much as we're joking about like Arya, and then I know that a lot of people are saying like Tormund and Ghost would have like a sequel. I don't want anything made that was not written by George R. R. Martin. Again, I don't. It's like unless, and that's why I like the idea of the prequels because that's all been written. This has all been covered. I mean, maybe not as fleshed out as A Song of Ice and Fire was, but still it's George's material and there is like a beginning and an end that he wrote. And so if you have to make things a little, add some details here and there in order to make it more interesting, fine. But at least with everything that happens in the past, that is all stuff that George has written. So we wouldn't have this problem of, having other writers trying to pretend they're George R. R. Martin. See, I didn't even watch the second season of Westworld, so yeah, I probably I kept meaning to because my husband loves it, and I watched the first season, and I meant to watch the second season, and I just never got around to it. Maybe I'll watch the second season right before the third season comes out, and it'll probably be a year before that happens. I do want to watch Chernobyl. I think that'd be good. I don't know if I want to watch Vikings, but I do want to watch Chernobyl. I know there's lots of stuff I always say I want to watch, and then I just don't. That's because I'm always on my computer and I'm always answering questions and I'm always reading stuff, and I am terrible at multitasking. I cannot absorb something that's happening like on TV and also like think about what I'm writing and answering questions. I can't do it. I just can't. I have said I'm the person that sits there and rewinds shows like 10 times and finally just like, why do I keep doing this? Because I'm missing things. Wow, okay, so we're already off Game of Thrones. Oh my goodness. I said yesterday there's so much to talk about. But yeah, I thought there'd be more to talk about, but they really tied everything up. I mean, there are loose ends, but not loose ends from like immediately, like in the immediate or recent past. They tied up everything they needed to, I think. And so I don't think there's much to complain about there. I said I just didn't. I said I don't. I just think the thing with Bran being king is weird. I mean, he's just like a weird kid that freaks people out, and he doesn't really say anything. So I don't know how you can be a ruler when you don't ever say anything. It's the kingdom's gonna, or the realm's gonna be run by the small council. I mean, essentially, Tyrion's gonna be running the realm. He will be, because what's Bran gonna do? He never talks. He never says anything. And I find it strange that everybody would just so easily agree to that, too. Again, I would have thought it would have made more sense if they would have said, Bran, okay, you can be the king. And then when Sansa said, but no, not so fast. The North is going to be independent. I'm just surprised the rest of them didn't say that, because that's what they all wanted. From the beginning of the show, that's what they all wanted. Once word got out that Robert's kids, once Robert died, and word got out that his kids were bastards and not really his kids of his blood, that's what everybody wanted. They just wanted to be their own king. It was why it was the War of the Five Kings. Because everybody just wanted to be a king of their own, so it seems weird that now, after all that, it'd be just like, okay, this kid we don't know. The Northerners know Bran, and they're the only one that aren't going to be part of the kingdom. The rest of them don't know Bran. Bran has never been able to leave Winterfell, other than when he went beyond the wall. So nobody knows this kid, and everybody was so quick to say, I to Bran. I'm like, okay, you don't even know who he is. Especially like people in Dorne, who are like light years away from the North, and wouldn't know anything about Bran. We got to see Robb and Arryn again. He at least could say I. So, he didn't start screaming about wanting to throw anybody out the moon door. You didn't like the ending, Janet? Like I said, that I mean, it's not my favorite thing in the world, but I'm okay with it, just because I was very disappointed in the last couple episodes, and so I didn't have very high expectations. And I'm satisfied with it the way it is. Some of it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I'm satisfied with it, because I know that when the books come out, they're going to be better. So I'm okay with it if they come out. And that's, and that's really cool to me. That's cool to me that I can watch this entire show, and yet I can still look forward to the books coming out, because even though some things are spoiled, I know there's so much that's not. And I really like that. So there's still lots for me to experience new things. So Game of Thrones isn't done for me. Who was that Prince of Dorne? Well, that's what I was talking about last night. I was like, well, all the Martells should be gone, even though there are a lot more of them again in the books. But and so who, like, they're probably closest bannerman would be the Ironwoods. But yeah, they just like casually mentioned the Prince of Dorne. He just kind of sat there, like, oh, like, whatever. Why am I here? Yeah, Sam is way ahead of his time suggesting democracy. That's why everybody laughed at him. That will never happen. Well, you think about it, like, with a lot of the monarchies now, I mean, even like in England, still a monarchy. It's 500 years later or whatever since William the Conqueror, and it's still a monarchy. That hasn't changed. I mean, the monarchy did fall at one time, but after, 11 years with the Cromwells, they were just like, okay, we need our king back. So there was some time, a short period of time in the grand scheme of things, where they didn't have a monarchy, but it didn't work out so well otherwise. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen more of that. Not necessarily a democracy, but again, independent kingdoms. That would have probably made me happier than Bran being the king. I think that would have made me more happier. And give, like I said, give Tyrion, Casterly Rock, and let him be the king of the Rock, and Sansa could still have been queen of the North. Yara could have been, the Queen of the Iron Islands. So I think I would have preferred that. And what I was saying yesterday was like I kind of like the symmetry of it, that Aegon the Conqueror came and conquered Westeros and united the kingdoms with his 3 dragons. And so I thought it would have been, kind of cool if Dany would have came with her 3 dragons and ruined all that, destroyed all of that, and just split them all apart again. So she only split apart the North, apparently. Yeah, this episode, I haven't rewatched the last 2 episodes because I just didn't like them much the first time. Because I usually watch every episode more than once. But this one I probably will watch again. Yeah, Bronn got Highgarden, which shocked me. Again, I think that's almost a little too comical because Bronn doesn't know anything about being a lord. He doesn't know anything about being on a small council. I mean, you heard him. He's talking about brothels. That's what he cares about. It's like, come on. Like, this guy would not be on the small council. He is a sellsword. That is what he is. That's what he's good at. And so to give him the biggest, or not the biggest castle, but the richest lands where he could, the potential to make more money, the most money. And it is probably one of the biggest castles because with Harrenhal being destroyed, I think it is one of the bigger ones. But I thought that was more of a comical twist than an actual realistic thing that could happen. I said I would have rather seen the Tarly family be given Highgarden, even though they have Horn Hill, but Highgarden is associated with the warden, or of the Reach. So I would have expected, being that the Tarly family was their most loyal bannerman, that they would have got the Lord's seat, I would say, but Sam's gonna be a Grand Maester anyway, so he's not there anyway, so. Are they playing it? They're playing it back to back. Yeah, next week I think they've got that documentary, and then that's it. Crazy. It's hard to believe it's over. Especially since we waited for so long for this season. Because even when it started, I was like, oh my God, it's already here. And then I was like, already, it's been like well over a year since it was on. But it seemed like it was just so far away. And then all of a sudden it just came up so quick. And then now, boom, it's over. I don't even know what time it's being aired here again. Usually it's not on right away. Usually it's on like an hour later, but they might be airing it back to back now. Not sure, because we also have the app, so you can just watch it whenever. As soon as you're done watching it, you can watch it again right away if you want. When Missandei was beheaded, it didn't make sense to me that Cersei didn't kill Dany when she had the perfect opportunity. Well, a lot of that stuff is true. Why didn't, Cersei has been obsessed with killing Tyrion, and why not take the chance, the opportunity to just kill Tyrion right there? Yeah, why not kill Dany? All it takes is an arrow. You had all those men up there with arrows, because Cersei does not care about playing fair. She doesn't care about rules of warfare. She doesn't care about any of that stuff. She wanted Dany gone. And so, yeah, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. It made no sense for Dany to put herself out there like that to begin with, to be in that position, because I would not trust Cersei to not just be like, okay, we're going to kill all of you. Especially when they all had bows, and arrows aimed at them. So I thought that was kind of dumb. It's like, if you're going to kill her best friend, forget that part and just kill her. That's a better way to handle the situation. And Cersei is cutthroat enough to do that. As I said, she doesn't care about rules. If it was a parlay, whatever, she doesn't care. What's anyone going to do? She's queen. So what's going to happen? And without Dany, Drogon would not have, Drogon might have taken it upon himself to burn everything, and maybe they thought that was a possibility, but without a rider, it's really hard to say. I don't think Drogon wanted to be there. He just hightailed it back to Essos as soon as possible. I feel bad for Drogon. So I said some of the things logistically don't make a whole lot of sense. That's why I said tonight I didn't know why everybody else didn't just say we want to be independent, because that would have made the most sense. So there's a lot just from a logistical standpoint that hasn't made sense this season. But You got to overlook some of that. Bronn is a new Littlefinger. I don't think he's smart enough to be the new Littlefinger, though. He's not. He's just. You always know where you stand with Bronn. He has no problem telling you that, like, I will kill you. Like, he's just not subtle enough to be like Littlefinger. Bronn is pretty in your face, and I would never trust someone like him on the small council. It's dumb. Like, he literally just like took money to kill Tyrion, and Tyrion's like, hey, come be on the small council. Worked out great for him because Tyrion was good to his word and gave him Highgarden. But I mean, I thought the twins at best, yeah, would have been good for him. They had a wait. You said I believe Cersei didn't kill Tyrion, and Jaime went back because they believed in the line must continue and fought for their family. Well, if that was true, though, Cersei had a lot of opportunities to surrender if she cared about her unborn child, which I was actually shocked was real because I thought for sure that she wasn't really pregnant or she had lost the baby and just wanted like everyone to think she was pregnant still. But she had plenty of opportunities to be reminded about caring about the life of her unborn child, and she just didn't care. And all of a sudden, at the end, all of a sudden she cares. And it's like, that's why I was like, don't try to make Cersei sympathetic to me right now. Like, seriously, I'm not buying it at all. And I don't believe she would have just sat there and like just waited to die either. I mean, I think there would have been a plan in place to get her out of King's Landing. Cersei was always good at playing the game and being ahead of her opponents. The Red Witch, well, Melisandre, she died at the end of the battle at Winterfell in season 3. I mean, it's in episode 3. Is that who you're talking about? Or are you talking about the Red Witch from Essos, Kinvara? Which, yeah, we never saw her again. But again, I think there were a lot of storylines early on that they put in there because they were part of Georgia's storylines, and then they didn't know what to do with them, so they just like ignored them. Because there were a lot of threads like that were just dropped. It's funny because I could sit here normally and talk about like for 24 hours about Game of Thrones. But I have to try to talk about things that you guys will be interested in, not just me wanting to talk about Targaryen history all night. But that I will say that again, though. If you haven't read the other books, I highly recommend them. Like I said today, I read The Hedge Knight just this afternoon. So you can read the Dunk and Egg stories very quickly if you want to start out with something shorter. It's usually better to read it after you read the full series, but when you're talking about having to read about 1,500 pages or 2,000 pages, even more than that, 5,000 pages maybe. Okay, maybe not that many, but like 3,500 pages of A Song of Ice and Fire and 300 pages or 360 pages of Dunk and Egg. Obviously, that's the easier one to choose. But I still recommend the World of Ice and Fire and Fire and Blood. Even though Fire and Blood is only a part 1, there's still going to be more. But I do start with which book first. Well, I would always say start with the series. Like start with the series first. But those books are long and they're really detailed and they're not complete yet. So if you don't want to invest that much time in something that might not be completed, even though I still think it's worth reading, even if he never gets another book out, I think it's still worth reading, because especially now when you know like where it's going to go in the show, even though it's going to be totally different, I still think it's worth reading. But if not that, it depends on like what you like. If you like the history stuff, if you want to learn more about the Targaryen kings, then definitely start with Fire and Blood, because it gives a lot of context to the things that happen later on. Because as I said yesterday, that George likes to repeat himself, like history repeats itself. He's a big fan of that. And then how you can things like everything kind of always, like I said earlier in the chat, you said everything comes full circle. that's kind of how George approaches history. That, if there's one thing about history is that it repeats itself. So if you are interested in that, definitely read Fire and Blood. They're amazing stories and bloodier and more horrible than anything that's done in Game of Thrones, which is sad to say, but it is. There have been some really, really horrible Targaryen rulers. And that's why I said that, like what Dany did is not even in the top 5 of horrible things that Targaryens have done. Probably not even the top 10 overall. But still, the stories are really interesting though. So if I was going to start out now, like I said, if you don't want to read the whole series first, then I would start with Fire and Blood, and then if you want to expand to the history of all of Westeros, then check out The World of Ice and Fire. But if you want to start out with something smaller, because Fire and Blood is 720 pages or something like that, so if that's still too daunting for you, then start with Dunk and Egg, because those are great stories. And I'm looking forward to Fire and Blood 2, which will be giving more details on Aegon the Fifth's reign, if anything. And I don't know if George wants to finish Dunk and Egg before he gives more details. I'm not sure what he wants to do with that, but there's a lot interesting about Aegon the Fifth's reign, and especially since now in the show they removed a generation. So in the show, Aegon the Fifth would be Jon's grandfather or great grandfather, because obviously the Mad King would be his grandfather. In the books, there's another generation there. Jaehaerys would be his great grandfather, and Aegon would be his great great grandfather. But they removed a generation in there. So a lot of this comes from Aegon the Fifth, though, and it was during his reign that this prophecy came about the prince that was promised. So that's why so much goes back to him, because that's when the family first learned that there's this prophecy and a Targaryen prince they thought was going to be born of Aegon the Fifth's line that was going to be the savior, that was going to be the prince that was promised. Yeah, everything's on audio. Yeah, I believe everything, all of them are on audio, on Audible or wherever you listen to them. I think you can get them all. I read everything on the Kindle, even though I also have the hard copy of A World of Ice and Fire, just because it's a great book. It's a great coffee book. It's a pretty book with lots of pictures and everything, and so it's just a really neat book. I also have A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which I said is the combination of all 3 of the Dunk and Egg novellas. I originally bought the graphic novels of them, so I have the graphic novels of those, and then I also have now the actual full story. So some things I have, there's more than one copy because, well, and they were releasing parts. George was releasing parts of the Dance of the Dragons in smaller stories that were in anthology collections. So I have all these anthology collections, and then it turns out all the content from those was pretty much put in Fire and Blood. So you don't have to worry about those. At least you don't have to buy all these weird anthology collections, because all the short stories you put in there pretty much are in Fire and Blood now. Yeah, I've never listened to anything on audio, so I don't know how the actors doing them are, but I think some of the names they say differently because they were on before the show was on. So you hear people say the names weird sometimes. So it's not like a really definitive answer of which one to start with. It's really what you're interested in the most. As I said yesterday, I had a hard time getting into the books just because it's not a style I'm used to, and I'm not really a fantasy reader. But I don't think that would be as much of a problem because you guys are all already familiar with the characters and you're familiar with the story. So I think it would be a much easier read than not knowing anything about these characters, not knowing anything about the book, and then trying to read it. So I think you'll pick up on a lot more on your first read than you would normally if you hadn't watched the show. Janet, what about the dragons? I mean, like I said, I would really love to see a prequel of the Dance of the Dragons, but there's too many dragons. They couldn't even handle 3. They couldn't handle 3. It was too expensive. So yeah, we'll never see that on screen, which is unfortunate because that's an awesome story. We were laughing today about how like I would totally watch like a little puppet version of the Dance of the Dragons. I don't even care. Like do a miniature puppet version of it so that I can just see it played out. I don't really care if it's actually like a big budget thing. Are you most interested in the dragons? Well then, yeah, definitely read Fire and Blood or the history, the World of Ice and Fire. Because again, as I said yesterday, that the Targaryens weren't even the strongest family, the wealthiest family. There are other families that were dragon rider families. So there were a lot more dragons. So they weren't so special. But one of the daughters of whichever Targaryen was leading the family at the time, which I totally forgot who it was. It's not Aerion, I don't think, but whatever. Starts with an AE probably. But his daughter, and her name I do know, Dana the Dreamer, she had a vision about Valyria. And she was like, we need to get out of here. Something bad's going to happen. Hi, Travis. So she said something bad was going to happen. So that's why the Targaryens escaped the doom of Valyria, where all those other families and all those other dragons were all killed. They had actually come to Dragonstone a while before. They were there for a few generations before Aegon conquered them. Because a lot of people think that Aegon just came here, and he really didn't. He was born on Dragonstone. His family had already been here, but they had their own seat on the island of Dragonstone. They really weren't trying to, unite the kingdoms or anything at that time. That was just something Aegon finally decided to do. But they were actually in Westeros for a while. But that's the only reason they survived. So and that's one thing that George has never given a lot of information on. What do you mean the Doom of Valyria? What happened there? It's one thing he's not written a lot about yet, probably because he's still trying to figure it out. It's never too late to start watching, Travis, even though I'd say read the books instead. But it's never too late to start watching Game of Thrones. At least you can just power through, binge watch it now all the way to the end and not have to wait like a year or longer in between seasons like the rest of us had to. Or, like I said, get the books. And I know I'm annoying people probably because they're just like, oh, stop with the books already. Don't care. Love them. Deal with it. Okay, so I have like 3 people here, I think. Oh, I have 5. Yay. Is there a Cliff Notes version? No. Yes, I can give you the Cliff Notes version. But this is a book, that series that you don't want a Cliff Notes version because the world is just so well developed and so rich that it's fascinating. This is one time when you don't want a Cliff Notes version. You actually want to read all of it. No, I don't. I think the Jon was revived for a reason, as was Thoros and as was Beric Dondarrion. They were, or not, well, Thoros actually did the raising, sorry. But Beric Dondarrion and Jon, they were brought back by the fire god, by Rolar, whatever you say his name. And because they needed to fight the Night King. So I don't think that's a thing anymore. I don't think that kind of magic has left. Or I don't see there being any more resurrections because that was the purpose. We never know because, again, that's never going to get to that point. And I don't know if I would ever watch a sequel that wasn't written by George. I really don't know if I would, because you can't top the master. All right, so is there anything else? Because now I'm just rambling about stuff. So if nobody has anything else they want to bring up, we can call it a night. So I'll give you a minute if anyone wants to bring anything else up or has any questions about anything. This was the last season. Why you're saying why wasn't this last season? It is the last season. You're confusing me, Travis. Don't confuse me. It's late. I'm actually still been on an hour, even though we had that false start in the beginning. Why was this the last season? Because the showrunners wanted to be done with it, which was very obvious from how much they rushed everything, because it did not need to be the last season. And HBO would have been cool with letting it go on. But they wanted to be done with it. The showrunners are actually doing a trilogy for the Star Wars franchise. So I think they were just like, peace out. Peace out, Game of Thrones. We're going to Star Wars. Oh, you're welcome. No, thanks to the few of you that stuck with me, hung out with me. I'm surprised that there actually wasn't more to talk about. But again, like when everything was wrapped up rather neatly, not much to speculate about anymore. That's kind of the bad thing. It's like, oh, no more guessing what's going to happen. Yeah, they got tired of it. They were pretty much done. But Game of Thrones was a show, and I mean, I don't fault them for this, because even though for us it seemed like it was barely on, because they're like this season was 6 episodes, last season was 7 episodes, they're still in production like 9 months out of the year, and there's multiple locations, and it's a huge undertaking. So from that perspective, I could see that maybe they just want to be done with it. But I would have rather they handed over to different showrunners in that case, instead of it being as rushed as it was this season. Because I think it definitely suffered. Even these last 2 seasons, I'd say that the writing really suffered because of them just wanting to get it done. All right. And with that, I'm going to call it a night. Again, thanks for being with me. And if any of you decide to read the books, you can message me anytime. You want to chat about the books. And Misty, you better be getting on that if you're still here. So, yeah, okay. Everybody have a good night. And hopefully we'll hear from the judge soon, and I'll have something ma'am related to talk about.